You're listening to Fox City's Murder and Mayhem, your bi-weekly dose of true crime history in a small rural community of Wisconsin.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Fox City's Murder and Mayhem. I'm Eric.
I'm Gavin.
And we are back. We are live from, I'm going to butcher the name, so I'm going to let Gavin say the name of the place we're at.
Well, we're at Tardigrade's Bookshelf, but technically at the moment, I think we're in the Velvet Fox. Because we're in another room.
Yes, which is the back room of the bookshop. So we are here live. We got about, looks like 15 people sitting out in front of us.
I think that's more than 15.
You think that's more than 15?
I don't know, maybe I'm being generous.
So, but we are back. We are going to have a story from Shawano. We've actually been pimping this story out pretty heavily on the podcast, so everybody should be well aware that it's a story of Shawano, unless, of course, you're not current on your Fox City's Murder and Mayhem podcast.
Yes.
So
we did tease it was going to be a Shawano story, and if you know a Shawano story, if you're from Shawano, this story should be familiar to you, at least to some extent. It is the story of, it goes by a few names. There's the Disciples of the Lord Jesus Christ, the Samantha Roy Institute of Science and Technology. It's gone by different names over the years. It started out in the late 60s or early 70s and still technically exists today, although the founder is well into his 80s by now.
Yes, and from what my limited research I did on this, I see that the founder seems to be still part of the organization.
I mean, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
We'll get to that. So the founder of this organization is a man named Rama. Now, he's gone by various names over the years, and I'm mostly just going to call him Rama to keep this from getting confusing. But he's changed his names multiple times as his belief systems have changed. But he started out as Rama Bahara. He was born in India. Apparently, his family was well off. He had a private tutor. He was expected that he was going to be among the upper class of people in India. And, you know, he was well educated there. But his education needed to continue, so he came to the United States to study nuclear engineering at Columbia University. While at Columbia, he came across some Christian missionaries, and Rama, having grown up in India, was born Hindu. He met the Christian missionaries, and he became enraged. He became absolutely angry, irate, wanted to tell them to leave his country alone. But as he tells it, one night while he was praying, a golden light came down, and out of that golden light stepped Jesus. And Jesus said, "Rama, why are you fighting against me? It is too hard for you to fight. Follow me, and I will be with you all the days of your life. I am Jesus." This, as I imagine it would happen to anybody, was a very life-changing experience. And Rama, from that day forward, switched from being Hindu to being Christian, at least for a while.
Okay. For a while?
It's going to be one of those episodes where you're just going to be quiet, right? You can jump in at any time.
It might be.
Okay.
It depends on how good you do telling the story.
Okay. So Rama takes up the missionary cause, and as part of that, he goes to Jamaica. While in Jamaica, he meets a young woman named Jelaine Smith, who was also a missionary. She happened to be Lutheran, and they got along very well, and by the time they got back from Jamaica, they were to be married. So they came back. He met her parents. Apparently, they liked him rather well because they got married, and he moved in with her parents. And this was back in Minnesota.
Okay.
So lived in Minnesota for a while. And Rama would continue to preach. He would go around, and he would preach at different churches throughout the Rochester area in Minnesota. He was especially popular among people who worked at an IBM. I don't know if it's a headquarters or just a major office they have in Minnesota. But
do we have a reason why these people loved him so much? Or
I don't know, but he was very attractive to well-educated people. It was a lot of teachers, engineers, people like that were really drawn to his message. He relied very heavily on the Book of Acts out of the New Testament, if for those of you who are familiar. And he used that in his preaching, and for whatever reason, that was a especially popular and attractive way to tell the story to this new group. He even got a radio station in Minnesota for a while where Brother Rama would go and that's what he called himself, Brother Rama, where he would go and he would tell his version of the gospel, and it would attract more people. He was apparently told by Jesus to purchase a house in Shawano, Wisconsin, which he was not familiar with. He lived in Minnesota, but the Lord said, buy a house in Shawano, Wisconsin, so he did. And he moved out there, bought a house that was a rather large house, large enough that his growing followers, which started out at a few dozen, but would eventually reach about 300 people, would go out, live in his basement, use his yard as sort of a farm field, and they would congregate there.
So do they bring... because he's making this transition from Minnesota to Shawano, is he bringing with him the followers, or
yes.
Is this like starting over in Shawano and now creating new followers?
No, some of them pick up and move. Other followers, they explain that they stay living in Minnesota because that's where their jobs are. But every weekend they would drive to Shawano, attend weekend services, and go back home, which seems like quite a drive. As part of his preaching, Rama apparently had the gift of healing. This would attract people at his gatherings. One woman apparently had an injured foot that he instructed her to go home, touch her foot, and her foot was healed. Another woman had stomach ulcers, and he said, if you stop sinning, your ulcers will go away. And soon her ulcers were gone. So
keep that in mind, everybody.
Yes. So, and whether you believe that or not, I mean, that's up to you. I'm not here to make that decision. But the people did believe it, and they started following him because they believed he had these powers. Now, as time went on, Rama would gain more and more power among his followers. And the followers, those who later would leave, said it wasn't so much that he demanded things from them, so much as they, the followers, gave up their power to him. They would increasingly ask, Rama, what can I do for you? To the point where Rama suddenly started making all kinds of decisions for them. He would raise their children for them. He would arrange marriages for them. He would tell them what kind of cars to buy. He especially liked buying Cadillacs for having them buy Cadillacs. So they would do that. He taught them the correct way to peel a banana.
Okay.
He banned them from eating peanut butter or Italian food. Just really strange things.
So do we know why he's banning them from the... Is it just because these are foods he doesn't like and he's like, don't waste your time with that?
The peanut butter, I don't know. The Italian food is because his version of Christianity really despised Catholicism. He hated the Catholics. And because of that, he'd said Italian food was Catholic food, which, I mean, it's a stretch, but
okay.
I guess Italy being where, the Pope lives, it's a pretty Catholic country, so I guess. So this was growing, and then it turned to where the members would apparently fight amongst themselves to try to gain more standing with Rama. At meetings, they would start calling out the sins of the other people there and make themselves better. Rama latched on to this, and he started giving members nicknames. Some nicknames were the Leech, the Goat, and one was nicknamed Miserable Nancy.
Wow.
So that was the case. The children would be raised very strictly. They would have to cut the grass using scissors. If they misbehaved, they would have to stand in a barrel overnight. Apparently, if young girls, teenage girls, misbehaved, they would have their heads shaved. And if a child behaved so much, they would have to walk through a line of the other children, and the other children would spit on them as they walked through the line.
Wow. Okay.
Yes. The cult, as it came to be known, now they still deny being a cult, but they're generally accepted as being a cult, did not get along well with the family members of many of these members. If you were in the group, you would marry in the group, you would have children who were raised in the group, but any of your family, brothers, sisters, parents who were not in the group, you were not supposed to associate with them.
Which makes sense that why those family members would dislike this group a lot.
They did not like that. And in the 1970s, there was a movement called deprogramming. Now, we did an episode, actually one of my favorite episodes, which is the UFO Education Center. Mm-hmm. Anyone here who hasn't heard the UFO Education Center episode, please look it up. It was here in Appleton. Fantastic episode. But the deprogrammers were people, sometimes they were psychologists, sometimes they were self-trained, and they would essentially kidnap people out of what they considered cult groups, hold them for a weekend, a week, maybe even a month, whatever it took to get them to break out of this way of thinking. And this was pretty extreme. There were at least 3 examples in the 70s where this happened. Mm-hmm. One, they even got off-duty sheriff's deputies to come and haul away the people. They brought them to a local convent, handcuffed them to beds, and tried to get them to break their ways. Did not work. In one particular case, they got a husband and a wife. The husband and wife were brought away. The wife went back to her family. The husband did not end up going back to his family. He actually, while they were driving him from one place to another, the deprogrammers, he jumped out of the moving car, and he went back. And he not only filed for divorce, but he sued them. He ended up making a significant amount of money for being falsely imprisoned by the deprogrammers. Many, many years later, that guy, his name is Bill Eilers, he would get out of the group. It took him decades, but he finally got out. And then he's like, yeah, everything I said back then, I'm so sorry for. But at the time, as he was going through the lawsuit and the divorce, he's like, no, this is why you're all wrong and why I need to stay here. And the judge, in these cases sided with him. The judge is like, I'm sympathetic to the family. He's like, I don't think this group is a healthy group to be with, but I, as a judge, cannot make determinations for what you believe as your religion. If that's what you want to choose, I can't force you to leave that group. So it was an interesting time where the deprogramming, and today I don't even know if that's still a thing, but at the time they would literally kidnap people, but like legally you can't do that. Like even if it's for a good intentions, you cannot kidnap people, so don't do that.
And I want to reference another deprogramming story we did in another podcast, and I don't know if Gavin will remember this, but this is a great example of history repeating itself. Mm-hmm. So if you think that deprogramming people because they believe in weird beliefs is a good idea, we did an episode with Native Americans, and back when Native Americans were first being integrated into the white culture in this country, they also created deprogramming programs to teach Native Americans to no longer be Native Americans, but rather be white people.
That's true.
So...
yeah, I mean, they wouldn't have used the term deprogramming at that time, but it's essentially the same idea.
Thing. Yeah, it's the same exact idea.
Yep, they would put them in boarding schools, and over the course of a school year, they would say, don't speak in your native language. You can't wear your hair the way you grew up wearing your hair, and they would turn them into, and oftentimes even with the native children's parents' support, because the parents, they were in a situation where they, as much as they wanted to hang on to their culture, they had to understand that if their kids were going to be successful, they had to integrate into white society. That's a whole other thing. We're not going to go on that path. But, all right, so as time goes on, the beliefs start shifting. At first, it's a very Christian-centered group, as it should be if, Jesus himself comes down and tells you, to be a missionary. But he starts moving away from that. he starts reintegrating ideas from Hinduism. He sets up his own sort of caste system where his dozens of followers have different levels. He's got the highest levels of followers, the lowest levels of followers. And this would kind of increase the infighting because, of course, if you're on the low level, you want to get to the higher level. So the way to get to the higher level is to knock down the people on the higher level. They would do increasingly wild things. On one occasion, Rama asked a follower to go to Los Angeles, pick up an envelope, deliver it to Pennsylvania, and then come back. So they would, from a round trip from Shawano, they would drive to Los Angeles, pick up the envelope, drive it to Pennsylvania, drop it off, and then come back to Shawano. The whole time stopping for nothing other than gas. And the follower who later left was like, we could have had FedEx do that for like $5. So it's
the principle, man.
It's the point where it's like, how more and more outlandish things are you willing to do? They would dig holes in the yard and then refill the holes just for having something to do. They would be told to dig for a week, and then after they were done digging, Rama would say, fill the holes back up. Part of these were used to build tunnels under the house. The first time the assessor came through, the square footage of the basement was, normal sized basement. The next time the assessor came through, the basement had grown more than 3 times the square footage. So they keep expanding the property both above ground and underground. At no point is this getting better for the people who stay there. They are consistently staying in the basement in sleeping bags while Rama's up in his fancy bedroom. So his beliefs start moving away from Christianity. He starts bringing in more Hindu beliefs and bringing in more classic Jewish beliefs. And he comes to this conclusion because he says he's realized that the New Testament of the Bible is a corrupt document and he cannot rely on it. Only the Old Testament is a reliable document. Again, I feel like if you're visited by Jesus, you would accept the Jesus part of the Bible, but he shifts his beliefs. And the followers seem to be pretty okay with this. Every so often, a follower would leave because of these shifts in belief systems, but it seems more often than not, they're already in. So if he starts changing things up, they're going to change things up rather than start asking why they're changing.
So we can see over history, though, that people were freely able to leave this group.
Yes and no.
Okay.
I mean,
that's coming?
Well, so they're free to leave in the sense that he's not holding them there against their will. At no point does he say, if you leave, I'm going to do terrible things to you. They're not in cages. It's nothing like that. But it's at a point where these people are in here for 10, 20, some of them 30 years. And they've got married in the group. They've had children in the group. There are later children who grow up and they're now in their 30s and 40s and they've never known anything else. So you could leave the group at any time, but the problem comes where if you leave the group and you can't get your spouse or your children to leave with you,
you lose contact.
You lose
with
them.
Yeah.
You lose them. So that's a situation nobody wants to be in, where they're like, okay, I have 5 kids. I either stay here with my 5 kids or I leave and Rama keeps my kids. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's a lot of times when the followers leave and they talk about it, they'll say that there's multiple times where they've run away in the middle of the night, but then they'll come back a day or two later because they don't have the strength to go through with it. And understandably so.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big transition. It sounds like Rama's kind of got them dependent on him, and to move away from that would be extremely difficult for them to do.
Absolutely. So this is starting, like I say, in the 1970s. By 1990, they changed the name of the group. It starts out as the Disciples of the Lord Jesus Christ. In 1990, they change it to the Samantha Roy Institute of Science and Technology. And Rama starts going by the name Samantha Roy. And he claims that the reason he changed his name is because his ancestors had the name Samanta Roy, and Rama Bahara was a name that his family in India had to take because they were not good enough to take. I don't know exactly the specifics of this, but he felt that to be more connected to his honored ancestors, he would retake on that name of Samanta Roy. As part of this, on occasion, when the followers would talk publicly, whether they had to show up in court or something like that, they would even go so far as to deny that it was the same group. They would say, no, the Institute of Science and Technology and the Disciples of the Lord Jesus Christ, not the same group. Sometimes they would even deny that the leader was the same man. They'd say, no, that was a different guy. And everybody knows this is not true, like, because he's consistently been going to, like, city council meetings because he has to get plans approved every time he modifies his house and things like that. So, like, the city knows it's the same guy. Mm-hmm. And he legally filed a name change. So, like, they know this is the guy who changed his name. But apparently the followers have been told to say that all that stuff we used to do, that wasn't us. Now we're the Institute of Science and Technology.
Interesting.
So, completely switched that up. Once they switch to this, they start going in a different direction where it's not so much about the religious beliefs, although there are still those. It turns into this massive money-making operation. Now, Rama is collecting money from his followers. And again, the followers who leave will say, he never made us pay him, but it was some people would pay him, and then we would feel obligated to pay because the other people would pay. And they were apparently paying a lot because the group starts buying up property in Shawano. They buy 2 hotels. They buy an American Inn and a Best Western. They buy several gas stations, both in Shawano and back in Minnesota. They buy a fudge shop. They eventually open a racetrack, and it's supposed to be an amusement park, but I don't even know if it ever ends up opening. But like millions and millions of dollars. He spends at least $12 million buying up property in and around Shawano, which for a guy who's technically unemployed is pretty good. This causes a lot of frustration with the city government in Shawano. They tend to not follow the rules of how businesses are supposed to be run, particularly with the gas stations. They will consistently price their gas far under the value of the other gas stations in the area, which, for reasons I'm not entirely clear on, there are minimum markup laws.
Yep.
And they just kind of ignore those. And they can get away with it for a while because the people who work at the gas stations are doing it as volunteers. Rama's followers don't want to be paid. So if they work at the gas station, they don't get paid. So the gas can be 50 cents cheaper than the store down, the gas station down the block, because they don't have to pay salaries. They end up getting in trouble for that. And instead of saying, oh yeah, we should probably be following the law, instead they see it as a vendetta from the city of Shawano.
Okay.
And the group goes like full nuclear against the city of Shawano. They start releasing newsletters, websites, just things. And the pages and pages and pages, most of this stuff has been scrubbed from the internet, but if you're familiar with the Wayback Machine, you can still find it. It's some pretty inflammatory things. They specifically target the mayor of Shawano, a woman whose name was Lorna Marquardt, and they print these newsletters, and like they'll put her head on an orangutan body, and they'll say, she's a secret member of the Catholic Church doing what the Jesuits are telling her to do. And then they'll say things like, she's a descendant of Hitler, and what she's doing to our group is worse than what Hitler did to the Jews. And like, that's like the lighter part of some of the things they say. it gets really extreme to the point where she sues them not as mayor but as a private citizen, and is like, you have to stop this. And their defense is, well, freedom of the press. Like, you're a public figure. We can say whatever we want. I love freedom of the press. And there are a lot of things you can say about elected officials and get away with it, but they're a little extreme. Like, it reaches a lot, you know, we have distinctions between freedom of speech and hate speech, and there are some things that clearly go into the hate speech because they're comparing her to some of just the absolute worst things that would clearly, you know, incite violence against her, to the point where she stops showing up at public functions. She doesn't go to the Christmas parade anymore. They put bulletproof glass up in the city hall. They are scared that somebody is going to act on these newsletters. The group, at this point, again, it's SIST, the Samantha Roy Institute of Science and Technology. They'll deny it. They'll be like, yes, the people writing these are members of the group. It's not an official publication of the group. What they write is their business. But it's pretty clear they don't disagree with what's being written. When the group ends up in court for various things, such as the low gas prices or, you know, any number of other infractions they run into, even their own attorneys start filing things like that, where they'll be like, this judge is not a real judge. They're a secret agent of the Catholic Church. They're going out there and they're going to put out a new Holocaust. They use all this language, so it's clear that this is coming from within the group, because the individuals releasing the newsletter and the official attorneys for the organization keep coming back on these same things, using Holocaust language or comparing people to slave owners before the Civil War, and just this really inflammatory language. The two attorneys who they become most associated with both grew up in the organization. The one who's the spokesperson for the group, her name is Naomi Isaacson. She's still around, and as I said, if they want to sue me, they can sue me. So I invited anything I say today. It's documented. Go ahead. But yeah, Isaacson repeatedly has to pay fines for filing things in court that you cannot file. Attorneys, believe it or not, have ethics, and they're not supposed to file certain things. There's leeway on that. You can certainly use emotion, and you can, try to sway juries and things like that. But you can't walk into a courtroom and file a document accusing the judge of being, Hitler's minion. That is not okay. So she'll repeatedly have to pay fines for this, and she'll eventually get disbarred. Though actually the state of Wisconsin steps in and is like, you cannot be an attorney anymore. That's not acceptable.
You mentioned another lawyer that was part of this group. Did that lawyer also get disbarred? I
don't recall if she got disbarred. The other one got suspended a few times for the same thing, but Isaacson was the one who was really out there. And even when the constant thing that they would do is when they would get in trouble, they would turn it around and they would say that they were being persecuted because the city of Shawano hated Rama because Rama was Indian. That was their argument. And they would that's why they would bring up Hitler and the slave owners and all this, because they would try to say Shawano is the most racist city in the world. It's full of neo-Nazis. It's just awful. Now, is Shawano a racist city? Maybe it is, maybe it's not. I don't know. But the grievances they filed against this group were legitimate grievances. They didn't just arrest people willy-nilly. They were breaking laws. So I don't feel they were targeted. In fact, if anything, I would say that they were being overly kind. The newspaper interviewed the local sheriff, the Shawano County Sheriff, and he said it was not uncommon for the group to call the sheriff's office, 100 or 200 times in a weekend.
Wow. Because
now, again, I know we have at least one person from Shawano in the audience. I'm not going to call that person out. But in Shawano, there's a tradition called Rama runs.
Okay.
I don't know. So you don't know Rama runs.
I do not know Rama runs.
Michelle doesn't know Rama runs. Okay. So ask someone who's grown up in Shawano. Rama run is this thing where usually it's teenagers. You get in a car and you drive like slow past where they call it the compound, slow where this place is. And there's always a woman who stands out front and she has a camera and she'll take pictures of everybody who goes by. So it's kind of like this like rite of passage where you do this. And then the woman who takes the pictures calls the sheriff's office and she reports harassment. The sheriff's office will come out and they'll have to tell her, yeah, I mean, clearly they're slowing down because they're curious about what your group is doing. But like, we can't do anything about kids driving on a public road. Like, they're not doing anything to you. They're driving past your place. So it's sort of this back and forth where they feel they're being harassed, which to some degree, that's arguable. But the kids don't actually do anything.
This isn't still happening today.
It could be.
It is really?
Now, the people, granted, now I'm getting a little older. So the people I know that did this was like 15, 20 years ago. But that definitely was still a thing. Rama changes his name once more from Samantha Roy to Avraham Cohen. And now this time he is full Jewish.
Okay.
He has said, nope, that whole Jesus thing, nope. I'm just Jewish now. And again, he will try to deny that he was Samantha Roy. He will deny that he was Rama Bahar. He's like, those were other guys that just kind of look like me. And on one occasion, he even gets an attorney to show up at a hearing, and it's not one of his like in-house attorneys. I'm not actually going to say her name on here because she's still active as an attorney in Kaukauna, so I'm not going to say her name. But she appears, and they show a photo of him with these two children. And it's like it's a picture out of a newspaper, and the newspaper says Dr. Avraham Cohen, neurosurgeon of Baltimore, Maryland, with his children, so and so. And they show this in court, and the attorney's like, "That's not him. That's a different guy." And they have to call people from Shawano to come and testify, people who have known him for decades, and be like, "That's him. Those are his children." And at this point, he's just making things up. Like, not that he wasn't making things up before, but he's really making things up now. He's not a doctor. He has no professional degree. He never even finished his nuclear engineering thing. So he is in no way a doctor. He's definitely not a neuroscientist. So he now lives part-time in Shawano and part-time in Baltimore. And in Baltimore, he's now got essentially a mansion. And his followers will go out there, do free woodworking and other things to fix up his mansion out there. He's active in a local synagogue out there where, he's like, I don't know who that guy in Shawano is. I'm just local Jewish guy. I grew up in a Jewish community in India. I don't know those people. Even though they come out to my house on the weekend and fix things up, I don't know who they are. Wow. So, yeah, it gets kind of weird. Now, the thing that really sets off the biggest problem of all comes in 2008. How are we on time, sir?
We are at 35 minutes.
Okay, we're doing good. Okay, we're doing good. See, I'm going to keep this under an hour, no problem. All right. In 2008, there is a businessman out of Canada named Bob Cameron. And Bob Cameron claims that he owes money to the group, which at this point in 2008 is still the Institute of Science and Technology. And in order to pay off his debts to the group for work debts that he owes, they fax him a list of dozens of people in Shawano, and at the top of the list, it says murder.
What?
Now, Bob Cameron is like, what the hell is this? He calls the police. He gets the FBI involved. And they look at it and they start talking to people, and the FBI believes this is an actual hit list of people, including the mayor of Shawano, an actual list of people that the group is like, they're too much trouble. We got to get them out of here.
So he's sending this list to this Bob Cameron because this is how he's going to repay him, is to kill all these people? Mm-hmm. Okay.
And Bob Cameron, again, is just like a random Canadian businessman. and he's like, that ain't me. Like, I don't do that. So he immediately like turns it in. Now, throughout the investigation, the FBI will make public comments saying they found during the investigation, they found it to be credible. So they didn't think that Bob Cameron was just making this up. They believed that this list had really come through his fax machine, and they really thought it was a threat. But apparently they were never able to conclusively trace it back to who had sent this to him. So nobody ever ends up getting arrested for it. So, does not create goodwill with the government of Shawano. Legally, again, they can't do anything. Like, they get the police and the FBI involved. They can't prove anything, so it eventually gets dropped. But that's not the kind of thing they just forget about. So definitely a problem. All the businesses in Shawano, almost all the businesses, I think the hotels do okay, but the other businesses, the gas stations, the fudge shop, the racetrack, the amusement park, they soon fold.
Okay.
So these millions of dollars that are invested, they don't last. This is really bad for Rama and his group because they've invested millions of dollars and they have not made millions of dollars. So this ends up putting them in a bankruptcy situation. People come forward who had worked on these things, people not members of the group, who had worked on like the racetrack and the amusement park, and they're even like, we told them from day one this wasn't going to work. Like, you can't just build like a world-class racetrack in the middle of the woods and expect people to show up. Like, that's not how that works. So they were like, I mean, we got paid to build it. We don't care. We'll build it. But we told them no one's going to come to this. So it goes under. And the bankruptcy proceedings are very strange. So pretty much nothing is in the name of the Samantha Roy Institute of Science and Technology. There are all these organizations with different names. There's Midwest Amusement, Midwest Oil. There's some that have like names that are just in Hebrew. Mm-hmm. There's like a variety of things. And they keep trying to file for bankruptcy, and the judges keep saying that they're not doing it the correct way because they're making no attempt whatsoever to pay off their creditors. They're just trying to get out of it. Mm-hmm. So the judges will consistently dismiss the bankruptcy cases, saying, make a serious effort first, then come back. And each time this happens, the attorney, Naomi Isaacson, who is the CEO of all of these groups, the Midwest Amusement, Midwest Oil, Rama's name is on none of this. Her name is on all of the paperwork.
Okay.
Every time this happens, she'll transfer the assets from one group to another and then file bankruptcy again. And each time the judge is like, this is the same thing. You can't just change the name on the letterhead and then refile for bankruptcy. So, yeah, that, again, does not...
But they're not actually doing anything shady in the bankruptcy. They're just simply not filing the paperwork correctly. Am I understanding that right? Or
now, again, I am not an attorney. I am definitely not a bankruptcy attorney, so I don't know the ins and outs of that. But from what I understand, there's various kinds of bankruptcy. Mm-hmm. And they're using a kind of bankruptcy where you more or less get a free pass and don't have to pay back your creditors. That's what they're trying to do. And the judge is not going for that. The judge is like, we know you have money. Like maybe you don't have the $12 million that you took to build all this, but we know you have money. You can't just not pay your creditors.
Gotcha.
And not, the people who spent years building this, you can't just not pay your bills on that. So that's kind of the thing.
Well, I mean, so one of the questions I have is you talked about how all of these different entities went bankrupt. Does any of them still exist today? And does this group own anything today?
They are still there.
I know they're still active, but did you find anything about it? Because I've always heard a certain gas station was owned by them. And I don't know, is that just crap? Is that just one of the gas stations they used to own?
It's a great question. I do not know which properties they own currently today. Now, if people in the audience know that, that's cool. You can volunteer that. I don't know what they own today.
But they still do, though. Okay.
I believe they still own
have.
that. They don't
have.
like the racetrack failed and this other stuff failed, but I do believe they still own certain properties.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay.
Even though at this point, like Rama or Abraham or whatever, he's spending most of his time in Baltimore. He still owns his quote unquote compound in Shawano. The followers still spend time there. Some of them apparently living there more or less full time. So they're still active. They still own things. They're still involved in the community. It definitely is down from its peak, especially as Isaacson being disbarred. She's not really active anymore. Rama being in Baltimore, he's not really active anymore. And he's like in his mid to late 80s at this point. So things aren't like, he doesn't have a successor that's really obvious. Yes. So what's going to happen when he eventually does pass, I don't know. But it does seem like things are going, they're slowly fading at this point. But yeah, I do believe they still own certain properties in Shawano. Yeah, I don't know. I guess there's not too much more. See, I'm trying to breeze through this. Like this goes into a lot of detail because if you want to know every time they have a court hearing, which they had a lot, and all this crazy things they would file. But on one occasion, Naomi Isaacson even has to spend a little time in the Brown County jail. She did something so bad she was held in contempt of court and was held in the jail. And she, at this point, said she was Orthodox Jewish, which I'm not going to say that she was or wasn't. She can say whatever she wants to say she is. But she complains and says they're not treating her according to her beliefs. And she gets the Jewish Chronicle, which is a major Jewish newspaper, involved. And the Jewish Chronicle clearly does not know who she is because the article you can find on that is like, Brown County Jail accused of discrimination against Jewish people. And it's like they take her at her word without really looking into it. And then the Green Bay newspaper does a follow-up. And the Brown County sheriff is like, you have no idea what she's talking about. They're like, one, it's jail. So, like, you're not going to get great treatment to begin with. He goes, but two, like, we have an outside group that comes in and provides meals. If you request a kosher meal, you get a kosher meal. If you request a vegetarian meal, you get a vegetarian meal. He's like, we're not violating anybody's religious beliefs here. Like, you're not going to get like an extra pillow because it's jail, but like we're not mistreating anybody based on them being Jewish or anything else. So yeah, so the original article that comes out is like, oh, this is this terrible thing. But yeah, the follow-up, the people in Green Bay, the Green Bay press, like they know who Isaacson is. And they're like, oh yeah, she's kind of known for just inflammatory language. So you have to kind of, when she complains about something, kind of put it in some context. What else you got?
Well,
see, you're whenever we don't do a lot of these live ones. This is like our third live one, but whenever we do these, Eric is especially quiet.
I think, just so you know, I think Gavin wants me to talk more than I normally talk because I don't think I'm any more quiet than I normally am. But
I don't know. Do regular listeners think he's being quiet? Yeah,
a little bit. Okay, maybe. So, talk about, because I really haven't heard anything like of the cops being called in for any sort of incident within this compound or anything like that. Is it pretty? I mean, is the big controversy of this quote cult is just that the fact that they're trashing the city government and stuff like that? I mean,
that is the main thing. So there's this really weird situation that comes out where when people leave, and they either speak to the press or it becomes public because they file for divorce from a spouse who doesn't want to leave the group. These things become public, and they'll consistently testify to most of which is not illegal. Like him having you do really absurd things is not illegal, but they'll testify to what's essentially child abuse. Some of the things they're doing to the kids. But then members of the group will come and testify, and they'll be like, that doesn't happen.
Okay.
So it's always this situation where they'll be like, yeah, the kids are forced to stand in a barrel all night. If they have to use the bathroom, they have to soil themselves while they're standing in the barrel. But then other members will show up and say, yeah, we don't do that. One former member who left even claimed that she had been in the group since she was a kid. And she claimed that when she was a kid, on one occasion, she even had a cattle prod put up against her. But again, nobody else would back that up. And by the time she claimed it, it was, at least a decade prior. So there wasn't much they could do about it. But that's every time these things happen, it's somebody comes forward and says this, and then somebody else comes and says, yeah, that doesn't actually happen here. So no one's ever held in any sort of like a criminal action for what's done to the members or done to the children. It's always sort of this he said, she said situation.
And isn't it? I mean, if somebody uses a cattle prod on you, isn't there going to be evidence of that?
I don't know. I mean, maybe not 10 years later. I don't know. But, and the followers would come forward and they would say, well, clearly we're doing something right because the people who grew up in our group are doctors, veterinarians, lawyers, etc. Like, they're people who are important people in society. Now, the lawyers might be a little nuts, but they're well-educated, members of society. Like they're not just some weird, Mongol children we're hiding in a basement. Like these are actual members of society. So, I don't know if that's a good argument or not, but it is. They make a solid argument that these kids are apparently getting some kind of upbringing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there's that. And the one thing that does actually come out, the one criminal charge that does come out, is there's a former member who was arrested for child abuse. And I don't even really want to talk about it because it's kind of gross. But it was between this member and his daughter. That's all I'll say. You can look it up. And his defense was essentially, I would never do that to my daughter. This was something that Rama and the group forced me into doing.
Okay.
And he ends up, leaving the group because of this. His daughter, at least as of about 10 years ago, was still in the group. But this was a big thing where, like, during the court case, the evidence against him was pretty strong, and he ended up serving a significant prison term for it. But his defense was like a whole list of former members coming forward saying, these are the things that they had us do to the children and this and this and this. None of which like rose to the level of what this guy got put in prison for, but it was trying to show a pattern that this guy wasn't doing it because he was a bad father or a criminal. Like, he was that brainwashed. He
was being conditioned to take it a little bit further, and then it got far enough that he got in serious trouble.
Yeah. Basically. I mean, it's I don't understand it personally. I don't know the mindset of these people. I'm not going to try to argue that one way or the other. But it is interesting to me that they can join a group. Within weeks of joining a group, Rama tells them, you're going to marry this other person in the group. And they're like, cool. And then, a decade later, they're still in the group. They've got 5 kids all in the group. And at no point does anybody say, this is weird. Why did I marry this person I met like 2 weeks ago and raise a family with them? Like, is that normal? I don't know. But it, for whatever reason, once they were in the situation, they felt that was normal.
That is weird. It is, and extremely scary too.
It is kind of scary. Again, like going back to the 70s when the outside family members were trying to deprogram people, you understand where they're coming from on that. Because to anybody on the outside, these people seem a little off. So
So now, if we look at present time, I'm assuming this group obviously still exists, but it kind of just exists, and the city has figured out a way to make it work with them and things like that. They're not causing any sort of press anymore.
It doesn't seem to be that big of a deal anymore. Trying to find anything newsworthy since about 2015 is kind of hard to do. The few things I did find strongly suggest to me that, again, they're going downhill. I did find like ads for sheriff sales of property being auctioned off. So the indication to me is Rama or Abraham or whatever is more or less in Baltimore at this point. He'll come back to Shawano on occasion to kind of touch base with his people there, but he's kind of abandoned it, and the place is drying up. They have to, auction off the property to even keep from foreclosure, or sometimes it is in foreclosure and the sheriff has to auction it off. So they're still there, but it definitely seems like it's on its last legs. Because, again, if Rama's not there,
It's waiting.
I don't know who's running things when he's not in town.
It's the one step away from being pretty much no more, probably.
I would say so.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. Should we open it up for questions?
I think we should.
Anybody have questions?
It's almost never we get to do that. But if anybody has a question about either today's episode or in general, I mean, it could be about the podcast. Yeah. So the questions, again, I'll kind of rephrase it. It's he was operating more or less as a religion originally, which gives you good tax breaks. Then they switched to this Institute of Science and Technology, which would sound like you wouldn't get the same breaks if you're claiming to not be a religion. I think they found the way around that because they were always claiming to be a nonprofit where they were going to build an international school to teach Indian children, science, technology, engineering, that sort of thing. How serious they were about it, I think, is a matter of debate. They went to the town of Westcott, which is like outside of the Shawano city limits, and they brought in these diagrams of what the school was going to look like, and they were not professional diagrams. They had not gone to an architect or anything. They were basically somebody sat down with pen and paper and kind of sketched out a picture of a school. And they went to, the planning commission or zoning or whatever, and they more or less said, like, we're not opposed to you doing this, but this is not, this drawing is not going to fly. We are not going to approve it based on you drawing a picture of a school. And from that point forward, anytime this would come up, the group would say the town of Westcott is being discriminatory against us. They don't want us there because we want to raise, an international school there. And the town of Westcott would consistently say, we're not opposed to a school. They've never come back with a second drawing. Just come back. Bring an actual sketch and some figures. So it was kind of like a stalemate where they would claim to be a nonprofit raising money for education, but they never seemed to put forward a serious effort to get the school built. So again, whoever side you want to believe on that, I'll leave that up to you. But at least from the town of Westcott's point of view, like they said, we don't have anything that shows that you have serious intent here.
Did they actually, take the time? Were they actually a legitimate nonprofit? Like, could you find paperwork of this nonprofit, or did they just kind of go in and start saying they were a nonprofit and never actually get nonprofit status?
It's a good question. I do not know if they filed nonprofit paperwork. Now, the Samantha Roy Institute of Science and Technology is incorporated in the state of Wisconsin. Okay. It does exist. Whether it exists as a nonprofit, I'm not sure. But okay. But they did actually incorporate it, yes.
Weird.
Yeah. All right. So I'll repeat some of that because I don't know if the recording can pick that up.
It will not pick it
up. Okay.
So
a member of the audience worked for the power company in the Shawano area, and she would have to go to the compound. The woman at the compound, her name is Darlene. Her name is Darlene Sense, is her last name. And she was kind of the one known for taking pictures. Apparently, even if you're the power company, you have to get personally escorted to check the meter. It sounds like they don't own much of anything anymore, except maybe a gas station or two. Darlene is an interesting one in that she was a long-time member. Now, when I had talked about the 3 people kidnapped for deprogramming in the 70s, she was one of the 3. She goes that far back. And totally unrelated, sheer coincidence, which is why I didn't even bring it up. Sheer coincidence, her husband's name was Gerald Sense, and he ended up getting shot and killed in Chicago. Not related to anything with the Rama group, but just sheer coincidence. But yeah, the Darlene was kind of like an unofficial spokesperson for the group for a while. She worked as like a bartender at the Best Western part-time. So she was, there were a lot of people. There was another man named Cal Granval. I'm probably saying that wrong. He was another spokesperson. So like of all these dozens of members, there were only 2 or 3 that ever really made public comments. But Darlene Sense was definitely one of those. Okay. All right. Yeah. So two part there. So the first part was, are the kids being educated at public schools? And then there was a follow-up comment, if in fact they really are doctors and lawyers. The second part, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's certainly possible you could put a title on your name and people could look into it and find it's not true. I don't know that one way or the other. Some of the children did go to public school, which was an interesting thing. Now, the ones who grew up in the group were home birthed. They were birthed either at the houses of the members or actually at the compound. So they did not use a hospital for that. And I believe to some extent they were homeschooled within the group. But by a certain age, they did attend public schools. And that, again, was one of the defenses when these court hearings would go on, is they would be like, if we're abusing these children, why don't the teachers notice and say anything? So that would be one of their arguments, was that clearly if a kid shows up at school and they're covered in bruises, like a teacher should be reporting that. We're obviously not injuring the children if the teacher's not reporting that. Again, I take that for what it's worth, but that was their argument. So they did at least go to public school at some point. I don't know at what age they started going, but at some point they did, yes.
That is a fair argument, but if you're putting a kid in a barrel and making him sit there all night, that doesn't really leave bruises, but it's pretty scarring, I'm pretty sure.
Well, and that's the thing. It's a lot of it seems like it was like deprivation type things, or the spitting incident where it's humiliation, but it isn't. They're not going around like breaking bones or anything. Mm-hmm. It's just humiliation and what I would call, psychological torture in some cases. I don't know if I can say that legally, but some of it to me sounds like psychological torture. She did. So the question was, did Ramos stay married to the woman he met in Minnesota? Yes. So her name was Jelaine Smith. She married him in, I think, 1966, and they stayed married the entire time. She changed her name a few times as well. When he changed his name to Samantha Roy, she changed her name to Jelaine Samantha Roy. When he changed his name to Everham, she changed her name to Sarah, which, if you're familiar with the Old Testament, that makes sense. So they did. Jelaine passed away a few years ago now, so she's no longer around. But right up to the end, they stayed married, and even in her obituary, loving wife, loving mother. They had 2 or 3 children. So yeah, whatever influence he had over his group, his wife was apparently not immune to it, because she went right along with it. Oh, I don't think I'm going to comment.
Yeah, we don't go there. We don't go there on our podcast. Sorry.
The comment. I will repeat the comment. The comment was, I wonder if we're seeing some of this cult-like mentality or whatever with certain political parties. We will not comment on that. I make a strong effort not to say anything political on the podcast. I find it in my best interest for people to not know how I feel about politics, particularly current event issues. So I will not comment on that. The question was, were the children involved? And it's hard to say because the children of Rama. Now, this is weird. So his daughter Deborah did grow up and become an actual neuroscientist or neurosurgeon. Again, unless that was just a lie, but that was what she was identified as. She did publish papers on the topic. But there's no real indication she was active on like a day-to-day basis in running things. His son grew up, and I forget what his exact title was, but he worked for the Congressional Budget Office. So he worked for the federal government. But it doesn't seem like they were active as far as running the group, and it doesn't seem like they spent much time in Shawano. It seems like once they were of like age, college age or adult age, they got out of Shawano. So how active they were, I don't know, but they were not around a lot.
It would be really interesting to hear their feelings on the whole group.
The daughter Deborah has passed away as well. The son, I believe, is still around. The question was, well, I'll say it the first part. This guy is, according to the question, this guy is really good at weaseling his way out of things. Did he ever get convicted of anything? And the answer, as far as I know, is no. As near as I can tell, he never, not once, was ever arrested for anything. He was not convicted of anything. And he was technically never even sued for anything. Because in all these cases where they knew that these corporations, they knew they were run by the group, but he was never the person of record on any of the documents. So even though everybody kind of knew that Naomi Isaacson or whoever, worked for him, he was not the name on record of any of the businesses. So when they went to court for bankruptcies or not paying, the proper amount, or not charging the proper amount for gas, he never went to court for any of that because he wasn't legally part of those businesses. Even though he was clearly the one taking in the money, he never officially was connected with them. Yeah.
Maybe you said this. Do we know what took him to Baltimore?
So I did not say why. What took him to Baltimore is that's where his daughter Deborah was, and she ended up passing away, as I said. And when she passed away, he inherited her mansion in Baltimore. So he basically just made it like his second home, which increasingly became, I think, his primary home. Okay. So he had no connection to Baltimore originally, but when his daughter, who lived and worked there, passed away, he stepped in and took over the house. And
he more or less has started one of these groups in Baltimore as well in that mansion?
I don't know if it's a different group, but the members of the group do. Again, this is based on what people who have left have testified to, is that they would go out there, and if they worked, their day job was as a contractor, they would volunteer on the weekend to go out to Rama's house and like build on a new sunroom or something, maybe if they were lucky, Rama would pay the materials cost. But beyond that, they were doing the work for free.
But most likely it was their money he was using to pay for the material cost anyway. So.
Right. All right.
Any more questions?
I like the questions. It lets me kind of get a sense of what direction people want things to go.
All right. Well, you did pretty good, Gavin. 108.
I was going to say I could get into like the details of the different trials, but it gets very repetitive of the kind of complaints that they consistently file. As always, I do post show notes online. So if you're curious, we have two different podcasts. We have Milwaukee Mafia and we have Fox Cities Murder and Mayhem. The Milwaukee Mafia show notes go on MilwaukeeMafia.com. The Fox Cities Murder and Mayhem show notes, not quite as clever, just go on gavinschmidt.com. You'd think I'd put it on FoxCitiesMurderMayhem.com, but apparently we're not smart enough for that. So
technology.
Yeah. But so everything you see in front of me here, this 22 pages of junk here, that will all be online soon. So if you really want to see the details of how wacky these people were when they went to trial, it'll be in detail there.
All right. So then with that, we'll wrap this episode up. We want to thank our live audience for joining us. Yeah. Thank you. And we will be back in 2 weeks with another episode. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was fun to kind of do a more current story than we usually do, and you're a fun audience, so thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Fox Cities Murder and Mayhem. Join us in 2 weeks for another exciting episode of Murder and Mayhem.